Worried when I crossed the Michigan line, a cop from Steuben County waiting on I-69. A headlamp went out while he pulled me over. Charged me with possession after I rolled down the window.
Now that's skunk.
Indians a trick when it comes to weed. It's like who doesn't smoke or use gummies? Your grandpa, your brother, your rich friend from school? Hell, throw in the whole courthouse and my attorney too. It's time those assholes change these stupid laws. It ain't worth the paper for a probable cause. Sitting on a bar stool in my usual place, this guy next to me said he was looking for some cocaine. Hell, I just sold him an 8-ball with a little piece off for me. But my buyer was a cop? Should have known he was a creep. So I'm a dealer, right? You gotta be kidding. It's a rich man's drug. I just take it because I'm injured. 8 years in Westville with a monkey on my back. There's more drugs in here than you can shake a shank at. One dirty drug test, man, this system's flawed. Undercover screwed me in my probable cause. Street crimes never did me no favors. I'm hooked on Fetty. I'm a junkie, not a felon. Told that son of a bitch on the way to lockup. I can't seem to shake it. I need help, not mocking. What do you want from someone who's been through the system? Drugs all through the house before mom and dad went to prison. Throw me in jail and give me a fine? Someday I'll be dead and away from your kind. Now I'm at the courthouse in front of a judge. Can't say my public defender cares for me much. Crimes are committed on both sides of the law. God help me now with this probable cause. C shift never gets old. Anything can happen when you're out on patrol. You think I'm just eating donuts, man? Give me a break. Nothing on this job is a piece of cake. Lights and sirens activated. This knucklehead wants to chase. Baby mama at the scene just spit in my face. Wife's worried that someday I won't be pulling up at all. You'll read about my killer in a probable cause. Man. She went through my phone and she seen my text. I told her forget it. It was just my ex. She took a swing and knocked me flat. Man, I went wild and hit her back. Judge slapped me with a no contact order. Now she's got the kids and she's staying with her mother. So she started it all and I have to take the fall. You can read my whole story in the probable cause. When I was young, caught a case for dealing and did my time. Yeah, I got a record, but I was doing fine. Running my own business on the southeast side. Yeah, I got a gun. I kept it on hand. Told the cop my reason, thought he'd understand. In this neighborhood, you need some protection. Attorney thought I could get just community corrections, but the judge decided to send me to prison. Can't get ahead no matter how hard I try. Read the probable cause, it'll make you
Whispers
cry.
and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on Earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause. Welcome to The Probable Cause. This is a podcast covering the criminal justice system here in Allen County, Indiana. Of course, we're going to be covering state actions, too, that might have an impact on the criminal justice system per se. We're not just Allen County, but also the 11 counties that are in northeastern Indiana. I'm Jamie Duffy. I'm a local journalist here. And this is my co-host, Allen County Prosecutor Mike McAlexander. We have a third one who is involved in our podcast that she will be supporting this through the phone. We call her my right hand. I call her my right hand. She knows the system from the other side because she was involved. She is the mother of a homicide victim. She went through the court system, and then she also helps a lot of people, young people who've had trouble with the law, and kind of helps them out, puts money on their commissary, that type of thing. So anyway, today I thought it is President's Day week. So, Mike, what are we looking at as far as the court calendar? I know it's not full.
Usually on holiday weeks, it's pretty limited. With Monday holidays, several of the judges have problem-solving courts that they're responsible for, and so we usually don't start trials on Mondays. And with a holiday, a lot of that work then gets shifted to Tuesday. So there really isn't enough time in the week to get a 3 or 4 day trial done. So we don't have any murders set. It's a long way of saying we don't have any murders set this week. But there are cases on the calendar And sometimes that's the easiest way to get some of the less serious or lower charge cases to trial.
So do we have a murder trial coming up? Several, as we usually have next week, do you know?
I'm pretty sure we've got something next week, yes.
Okay. And you also want to talk a little bit about legislation that's coming up that might help the bottom line here in Allen County as far as the state helping pay for the prosecutor's office. Take it away.
Just as background, this is one of those areas that the state's involvement with prosecutors' offices, they pay for the salary of the elected prosecutor and for the chief deputy, the vast majority of both of those. However, unless you have a prison in your county, they generally don't reimburse for any other of the deputy prosecutors that are there.
You have to have a prison in your county? Like, it's not like you have that much more interaction.
Well, you get a lot of prisoner litigation that gets filed in your civil courts. You may have crimes that are occurring, assaults within the prison system,
I'm
drug
sure there
smuggling, all sorts of things that are criminal in nature. So that's why that was justified. But in terms of most of the counties, and it varies, some counties only have a prosecutor, chief deputy, and maybe a part-time deputy. We have like 37 total deputies, 35 or 32 or so that are full-time. So it's a pretty big burden on the county to pick up all of that cost. And so for the first time, the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council proposed legislation, and this became a priority bill with the Indiana House of Representatives to create this reimbursement. It also has other provisions that have received more publicity about dealing with what's referred to as non-compliant prosecutors. And that's a situation where a prosecutor would say there's a specific crime or a type of crime that I will not enforce, I will not prosecute.
Actually, I think I know which one you're talking about.
I think it's not real hard to figure out.
Those liberal counties that won't prosecute misdemeanor marijuana possession. Am I right or not?
I believe that was the spur on this,
Right.
But I believe there were other instances after the George Floyd protests and stuff that there were statements made along the lines of not prosecuting people that destroyed property or assaulted officers. So, I mean, I think there's some things. Prosecutors very much appreciate the discretion that they have in going forward on charges. So that's something that's very important to keep us from becoming politically influenced in how we do charges. Or for any other reason. So
I would totally agree with that.
So what they're doing with this is looking at a 50% reimbursement for felony deputy prosecutors from the state to the county. This would probably save Allen County $1.5 to $2.5 million. So it's a very significant
Well, you were
proposal.
saying that the whole budget is how much?
Our office is $8 million from County General. Now,
So-
some of that gets reimbursed. Our child support program gets reimbursed at 66% for the people that are in there. We also supplement that with some of the deferral monies that we receive for pretrial diversion and infraction diversion programs. And so that kind of stays within us. Our actual budget is a little higher than the $8 million. But what the county's paying, this would be a very significant contribution back to the county.
Do you think that it's going to happen? I mean, bills get, introduced and then they just sit there.
Well, it's being modeled after what has been done for the last 15 years or so with public defenders, that if you join the public defender program, your county gets reimbursed at the 40% level. Now that puts into place caseload limitations that prosecutors don't have. As a matter of fact, they did a study a few years ago and said that if prosecutors followed the caseload recommendations of the public defenders, we would have to nearly double our staff. Now, I don't think we need that many additional people, but certainly some more would be very beneficial. Where it is in the legislature, I mean, every day things can change. It could be wiped out as soon as it gets to the Senate. But the fact that it was a priority bill in the House is very significant. I believe the governor is supportive of this.
That's good.
But every time you read about the legislature, you're hearing that certainly the schools need money. There are other departments that are struggling, and who knows? Frequently, the funding in the legislature comes down to those last couple of weeks in April during a budget year.
Then we need to watch this. And do you know the number of the bill offhand?
1006.
1006. Okay, everybody look for House Bill 1006. We'll be following that. I did want to mention, too, that last week we did have a murder trial. And this man, Archie Whitus Jr., was convicted of murder and also of using a firearm in the commission of an offense, which can add up to 20 years. He's being sentenced on March 11th. I went over the probable cause once more. I was telling Mike what I found to be really sad was that this man is 50 years old. He told one of the responding officers that he was an Army medic, which means given his age, he could have served in Afghanistan. What were the reduced circumstances that led him to be living in one of these Coliseum Boulevard hotels, which you call?
No-tell motels.
No-tell motels, right. He goes to this other guy's room, according to the probable cause, because unfortunately I did not cover it that last week, and argues over the drugs that he was buying, called them poison or whatever. And supposedly he got a gun pointed at him. He grabbed the gun and used it on this one, Donald C. Warren. And he even aimed for center mass, he told one of the responding officers, which I also find kind of sad. And you just wonder if this was a veteran who was suffering from something. I don't want to excuse what he did, but, we will talk some other time about what services there are and what you see in the prosecutor's office, because you are also a veteran.
Yes.
A Navy veteran, an intelligence officer during...
I was enlisted, not an officer.
Oh, you were enlisted? But you were also in intelligence, right? Mm-hmm. I know, which is kind of neat. You could be writing spy novels, and we know that. So anyway, actually what we want to talk about today is the number of failure to appear. I have used the arrest records from the Indiana State Police. Mike and I were talking about this before. He's not sure he agrees with these numbers, but I'm just going to throw them out there. In 2024, we had 675 people in Allen County who were arrested for failure to appear in court. That's more than 2 a day, I was figuring.
Well, and that's where I'm kind of questioning that. I have no doubt that 675 people didn't show up for court hearings. However, there is a separate charge in Indiana Code for failing to appear, and I don't think we have filed that many cases for that specific charge. Usually what happens if you are out on bond on a theft case or a burglary or whatever, and you're supposed to come into court and you don't come into court at a scheduled hearing that you've been given notice of, the court will issue a bench warrant to pick you up. So I'm wondering if that's picking up that as failure to appear. But while we can...
Well, it is arrests that we're talking about.
Well, they'd be arrested.
These are arrests, 675 people in Allen County. And I don't mean to cut in, but in this year so far, we've had 129. That's more than 2 a day. Whereas in Marion County, supposedly, okay, I'm just saying I'm getting this from state data, only 14 people were arrested for failure to appear last year. That's Marion County. They're 2.5 times larger than we are. Lake County, St. Joseph County, kind of on the same number. Lake County had a few more. They're about 100,000 people more, I think. Vanderburg makes us look great, okay? 771 people arrested for failure to appear. Probation violations, they had nearly 1,400, whereas Allen County had, I would say, put this together, I will be putting this up on the website, only about a third of those. So, yeah, what were you saying?
Well, I think sometimes departments classify data different ways.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that the actual criminal charge of failing to appear, I just don't think I've seen that many of those charges. I would say there's only been a handful that we have filed that charge. But I could see it being classified for statistical purposes that, yes, we have picked up a bunch of people because they didn't show up to court, but not that we filed that extra charge, if you will.
Okay, so in other words, they were arrested for that, but not charged, is what you're saying.
Not charged with that specific crime. They'd failed to appear, a bench warrant was issued, they were picked up. So it would show up as an arrest, but I don't know that we filed the separate charge of failing to appear.
Okay.
Usually what happens when you don't show up for a court date, you're going to be picked up and you're going to be held till your case is disposed of. So a lot of the people that are in the jail, when you see if somebody's there for a misdemeanor possession of marijuana or a low-level theft case, that is usually because they violated some form of their pretrial release.
Right, and there is a professor out in California, I'm going to pull her in here one of these days, calls those non-criminal violations. And, and that the public safety is not at risk. So here, let's go.
Well, we get into that in probation and revocations on that. And what we generally refer to is two status. Either you got picked up off of your probation because you committed a new crime, or technical violations. Now, usually technical violations are considered not showing up for probation appointments, failing drug tests, or not fulfilling other obligations that you're supposed to follow while you're on probation.
Anyway, let's go over some of the reasons. There is an organization called the Vera Institute for Justice. It is really a great organization. I've been to a couple of Pointer seminars where they've appeared and gone over it. They investigate problems in the prison and jail system. They said a lot of reasons that people miss court are understandable. They say there are logistical challenges like not being able to miss work, lacking transportation to court, not having child care. People may not have recent or updated information about when or where to appear in court. Okay? Some may not even know they had a mandatory court date in the first place. So tell me, what can we do to help these people out? I mean, I know you're the prosecutor, but you might be just as frustrated as a defense attorney I talked to this past week. He said he spends more time tracking down his people than he does in the court.
Well, there's a couple of things. Some of those reasons for failing to appear, we understand whether a car breaks down. A lot of the folks we deal with don't have driver's licenses, and they get in trouble that way. So they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Right. Well, we are going to be talking about that. Not today, but
the biggest thing in the last 20 years or so, though, was when our pretrial services started doing phone notifications to everybody about their court dates. We saw a big uptick in people being able to make their court dates.
So did they get one call, or were there multiple ones, or?
I believe usually the day before they get that. Now, they are always told in court what their next court date is. Mm-hmm. However, I also recognize a lot of the people and a lot of the crimes are what I would refer to as more crimes of irresponsibility than criminal masterminds.
Okay, I like that. Crimes of irresponsibility. That'll be a new one that we add to it. Okay.
And those people are generally not super responsible, and they aren't very stable. and they don't carry around pocket calendars or have their calendars on their phones. So they just struggle with making the basics. And we see this, people that are put on probation.
All right.
If you, and you brought up a veteran in the prior case, we've been very successful, say, with veterans in the problem-solving courts and on probation, because at least at one point in their lives, they were able to follow orders,
Right.
show up when they were supposed to, do the basics that the majority of folks that hold down jobs for a long time, get their kids off to school on time, that are productive members of the community. Veterans, when they come in, usually have a higher success rate because there is that part of them that can be regulated and they're used to it. Obviously, anybody can have a substance abuse problem, and that's usually that or mental health issues is what drags them down. But with some of the other people, they've got all those same indicators of substance abuse or mental health, but they never had the stability that a lot of the veterans had. So,
Right.
so they can be more productive. But if you've never really been responsible, those folks we struggle with making appointments. We tend to say that there's a lot of, if you will, middle-class people that are used to following the rules if they get in trouble. They don't have any trouble following probation rules because they generally weren't criminals. I mean, we
And they
see-
have support.
Yes,
They have a family who can help them out if their car breaks down,
yes.
as you brought up.
So there's a lot of factors that go into success on supervision, and that does get back to who doesn't show up. Yeah, are there people that, hey, I went to bed too late, I didn't wake up in time to get to court? We have those kind of situations
A lot.
a lot. And sometimes it's
It's
confusing.
very maddening. I can imagine being the defense attorney, and I've been in court when they haven't shown up, and everyone's like, well, I don't know if she or he is going to show up today or not,
And sometimes, you've been in the courthouse. We're usually running 3 or 4 courts at the same time. We've certainly had people either go to the wrong building, they're supposed to be in misdemeanor, and they go down to the courthouse, or vice versa, or they get into the courthouse, they find their way up to the 3rd floor where most of the criminal hearings are held, but they park themselves in the wrong room. And then they're sitting there at the end of the
So
session.
the attorney is making a mad dash to, I could just see that.
Yes, it
So-
happens, I'm not going to say daily, but several times a week.
So anyway, it says failure to appear policies. This is the Prison Policy Initiative now, too, which is another great source that I use. They're saying that these policies focus on punishment, not on improving appearance rates. Well, we've already said we have the phone message system here in Allen County. Many of the penalties, like driver's license suspensions, only make it more difficult to get to court. And they also say that those on pretrial release, probation, parole, who miss a court date, this can lead to fines, jail time for people on pretrial supervision or probation, or a return to prison for parole. So, and then it also talks about the bench warrants. So just talk a little bit about, I guess for those people out here, we never know who's going to be watching this podcast. I do have some friends who I call knockabout lads, who are the ones who didn't grow up with any support, sometimes had a stepdad that beat them up, and people like that who try hard, who are knocking about for work, don't have many resources, and they face all of these things.
Well, and some of that has been addressed in Indiana. Probably the most significant thing, and this was probably done, I think it was back in 2013, but the legislature in those 10, 12, 13, 14 redid the criminal code. But even before that, they created...
That's when they decided that the felony sixers were going to stay in the jails.
Yes.
Which someday we're going to talk about that, because I'm not really sure I like the idea of felon sixers down there in the prisons. But continue, please.
Well, They did, I think, two things to try to alleviate some of that, and which also gets into your criminal record and finding employment. They created the expungement statute that allowed you, after a 5-year period, to get rid of misdemeanor convictions. And it also has other provisions that can go on up and get rid of some significant felony convictions now.
Like an OWI, I believe.
Yes,
You
can
could
get
do
rid
that,
of.
right. So that gives
misdemeanor-
hope to some of the people who might be watching this.
So that
Except don't drink and drive, please.
Right.
Go ahead.
The expungement statute has given that second opportunity, kind of in response to some of that concern that once people got marked, they were stuck as felons forever.
Oh, yeah.
And they felt that that was important for primarily employment reasons. The other thing that the legislature passed that's now been in place, I think, for at least 10 years was specialized driving privileges. So if you got tied up in different counties and picked up speeding tickets and either didn't show up to court and your license got suspended, or even if you were like 3 OWIs would make you a habitual traffic offender. If you fell into some of those categories.
Which can send you to prison.
Which can send you to prison.
I don't agree with that, but go ahead.
Well, they put in with the specialized driving privileges the ability to get in and get a driver's license to make you legal. And it's pretty open, even to people that are habitual traffic violators. But you would be amazed how many of them get picked up on an HTV and get convicted, and they never bother to look into the specialized driving privilege. And then they get picked up again for HTV. At some point, you got to be responsible for yourself.
Make sure everybody knows when you say HTV, there
habitual
is
traffic violator.
Habitual traffic violator, which does have another term associated with it, which I don't think we should say on the podcast. So, yes, I mean, I think that there should be a special prayer for these people, honestly.
I do too, but this gets back into, and HTV is probably my biggest one that is so irresponsible to be convicted of that more than once, because there are off-ramps for you to use to get out of that category. And we're pretty good about it. But if you become lifetime and get convicted second time, third time, you can go to prison for up to 6 years on that charge.
I know somebody who did. So, and he says whenever he tells anybody that's what he went to prison for, nobody believes him. So, anyway.
Well, you have to work hard to be irresponsible enough to get in to go to prison on HTV.
See, that's where the prosecutor and I have differences. So, anyway, so can we please get my right hand on the phone? So, this is my right hand. We're going to go over an actual scenario that occurred I found online, and it's all about failure to appear. I'm going to have my right hand and Mike jump in whenever they feel about it or when they feel it's necessary. So I got this off Quora, and this guy calls himself, or he describes himself as been that, done there, okay? And so somebody said, oh my gosh, I've got, I found a failure to appear. What should I do? What does it mean for me? And so this guy calls in and writes in and he says, call the courts and reschedule. If you can't reschedule, go to the court and ask for a reschedule. Obviously, he means rescheduling a court appearance. Be prepared to be arrested. When this happened to me, I did the latter, and they were more than happy to set a new date. Is that the way it is in Allen County?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's your sense of it?
I was just going to say I don't think that's how it works in Allen County. I think you got to go to the jail and turn yourself in, and then you'll see the judge the next morning, and they'll clear that warrant and reschedule your court date.
So you get to spend a night in jail.
I would agree with you. That's generally how it happens. There are times when I think if you've got an attorney with you and they bring you in, you might be able to walk it through, show up at 8 in the morning, you're taken into custody, and maybe they'll get you in that day. In civil cases, it's usually a little easier than criminal. If you know you've got a conflict and you're represented, then definitely notify your attorney that you can't be there. And if he's asking for it the day before, he may very well be able to get a continuance. So if you have a family emergency, parent's sick, you got to leave town or something, it's that advanced knowledge. But if you just essentially blow it off and don't show up, then there's going to be a warrant issued for you.
All right, well, we got to get the rest of this guy's story. So he said they were more than happy to set a new date, which we don't think would happen in Allen County. Get paperwork for the rescheduling in case you have police contact. So in other words, if they're coming to get you, you better have that paper. Then you can show the cops that you rescheduled. Now, this is where the interesting part comes in.
I would say the cops are probably more likely, if it's still in the computer system as an active warrant, they're going to act on the active warrant, unless there is something that's just so off of mistaken identity or something like that. They've got a warrant, and if that warrant is for you, they are probably, no matter what kind of paper you show them, they're probably going to go forward.
My name is Javert. Okay. So he goes on. My ex wanted me in jail, so she called the cops because she knew I missed the court date. And she knew there was a warrant out for my arrest. She made the mistake of telling me this right after she did it. So now he's been forewarned. Foreshadowing here, right? So he says, I drove right down to the courthouse and walked right into the court branch office and told them what was up exactly. They told me that it might take a minute to quash the warrant, so be prepared to go to jail. And they rescheduled and put it into the system to get rid of the warrant. Anybody want to say anything?
I don't think would happen in Allen County.
Well, and the other thing on his story is this something that he missed a civil hearing versus a criminal hearing? Was he supposed to be there to review child support? I think with civil matters, they're much more likely to give you a new date, or you can go to the court and get a new date if you missed something.
But why do I get the impression that it wasn't a civil matter?
Well,
okay, so
I
I'll
would say
continue.
normally you're not going to talk your way out of a criminal warrant.
Right. We don't know what county this is. We don't know what state it is.
Right.
Okay. He did not say. So he said, I drove back. Now, this is after he's rescheduled. I drove back and passed the police cars coming to arrest me, looking for the address. They showed up a few minutes after I got home. So he's home now. He said, my ex was waiting there and was like, aha, the police will be here soon, mister. I was like, good. And the look of confusion on her face was good to see. The cops drove up, and after extensive back and forth with me and with headquarters, so obviously they had headquarters involved, so maybe it was a smaller town. I'm getting the impression this was a smaller town. The police officers agreed that they should not arrest me and take me to jail because I had the paperwork to reschedule the missed court date, and they knew I would just be released once the warrant got 86th. Any comments?
It's funny that he used the term 86. That's used in food service a lot.
It is?
Work in food service. Yeah, 86 the cheese. 86 the lettuce on your sandwich.
Do you use it in the prosecutor's office, 86 something?
I forget if that's a military term but it means you dispose of something.
Yeah, I want to say it's kind of older. I hardly ever hear it anymore.
I don't know if it originally was a police code. I mean, we do have police codes that are used.
Yes, we do. I'll have to check the police codes. I don't think
But
it's
I'm
on
not
there.
sure what the origin of 86 is.
So anyway, he goes on. He goes, now you must remember that some police don't care if you have all the paperwork in the world. Because of liability issues and such, you will be arrested if there is a warrant. So then he goes on to say, our jail is overcrowded and the police regularly issue order-in tickets, which are like a traffic ticket except that you must go to the court date. No bond for offenders, even felony nonviolent perps caught in the act. My case was also nonviolent, so maybe it was civil. Maybe it was a child support thing, which may have contributed to the cops' behavior. Now, what he is advising them to do is what you can do is look your case up on the state website to see if there is a warrant. That is very good advice. Mm-hmm. Now, if these guys, the knockabout lads I've been talking about and some of these other guys, they know what my case is. So there's really no excuse. But like I said, they don't come from families typically that have support. It also takes time to update the court records, so it might not say if you have a warrant when you have one. If you have a body-only warrant, you better get acting soon. Get on the horn, he says. What do you have to say to that?
Oh, I would agree. Again, the sooner you start communicating with the court, criminal warrants are it's pretty hard to talk your way out of it without being in court. But other civil warrants, you're more likely, if there's confusion, we run into this on protective orders. Have they been served properly? Is that in the database? There's stuff like that does go on that you have to be careful on, and officers are careful if there's something strange about it. And if a warrant is real old, they might be more cautious in arresting somebody based on an old warrant.
It seems like the SWAT team's out there all the time, literally. All you have to do is look on Nosy Neighbors.
They follow the SWAT team around the town.
I know. So, I mean, I'm thinking there must be warrant after warrant, but that's another whole discussion. There's one more guy who weighed in. He said, if you miss a court date in a criminal case, there will be a warrant issued for your arrest. If you paid bail to keep out of jail, you just lost your bail. Is that true?
Usually.
Yep.
Okay.
You're going to be in, generally, if you have failed to appear for a court date, at least in our county, that being Allen, our policies in criminal court is you will be arrested and you will stay in jail until your case is resolved.
And that's a no bond.
And that's a no bond.
Okay, so that's a no bond, and you could be in there for a good long while.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the concerns, certainly, that I have. If on lower level offenses, they may be set out quite a ways.
Yes.
If you're out of custody for trial. Well, if let's say you get arrested in February and you're for possession of drugs, and you go in and you post the bond, you come to court, they set your trial date, and because you're out of custody, maybe it's not set till August or September.
So you're sitting in jail until August?
No, you're out at that point when they set it. Well, then a month later, you do something else, either miss a court date or commit a new crime. Then a warrant is put out for you, and then you're going to sit till that trial date is up, unless your attorney tries to negotiate a plea with us sooner than that, or if you would ask for an earlier trial. But it creates some issues for us on Criminal Rule 4 and how long people are in jail, because that trial date may have been set out beyond the statutory maximum.
All right. And Criminal Rule 4, we definitely got to do that one too, one of these days. So anyway, he said you just lost your bail. If you get to court first and have a good excuse, you might get out of it. You're not looking like you agree.
It's up to the judge.
It
Right.
is up to the judge, but the prosecutor can have their input.
Yeah, the prosecutor's going to be fighting for keeping them in jail, and the defense attorney is going to be fighting with the good excuse, quote unquote, to keep them out of jail. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the judge.
But I've actually heard prosecutors say they're okay with it.
I think it depends on the case. It depends on the excuse. I have certainly been in court and somebody says, well, I was in the hospital. Well, do you have any paperwork to prove that.
What about a photo that's dated?
Well, I mean, if they've got evidence to support their claim, yeah, I mean, everybody's had bad things happen. So it's not unusual for us if then they do show that they couldn't make it because they were in the hospital, then, we withdraw our request.
But I mean, I've seen other cases where defense attorney might make a suggestion and the prosecutor say, well, we're okay with that. It's not like you're always persecutors. Sometimes you're prosecutors.
Right. No, and I was on a civil, had a civil case 6 months ago or so that the respondent, civil, didn't show up, and she alleged that she was at the hospital. Well, the court staff called the hospital. They, for some reason, didn't believe that she was being truthful with them. So they checked it out before they issued a warrant.
Oh, well, that's handy. Okay, so this is the second guy. He goes, if law enforcement find you first, you will be arrested and get to sit in a cell until the next court date, which is exactly what you were saying. You will not miss this one. You will be escorted to court by jail staff while wearing a stylish, bright orange jumpsuit or other similar inmate clothing and likely hand and ankle cuffs. And so I thought that was interesting, too, and that's a warning to all you people out there. I know it's hard. Try and find your support. Try and call the courts, call the prosecutor's office if you have to, and so you don't sit in jail. So anyway, that is go ahead.
There's times that people don't have transportation. I think that's one of the biggest things with the people that I've known that have gotten failure to appear. I guess the biggest thing, like Mike said earlier, is they just blew it off. But aside from that, the biggest reason that I've been aware of is that they just didn't have transportation to get there. I mean, personally, I would start walking 4 hours before if I needed to, if I was that far away or whatever, but not a lot of people are that dedicated to go to court.
Well, but I think of it this way, too. If they have a job, and then they have to, well, no, wait a minute, that wouldn't work. But they would have to take a day off from the job. I mean, we don't have the greatest public transportation here. It's not like that guy at CityLink isn't trying, but it's a big county. Geographically, Allen County is a huge county. And so if you live out in the netherworlds or whatever, you're going to, or, various other reasons that affect it.
I've also seen where someone was supposed to be at court at 9, and they called their docket somewhere between, say, 9 and 10, and they're not in the courtroom, so the judge issues a warrant for failure to appear. But before that court session is over, say, 10:30, 11:30, that person comes running into the courtroom. Sorry, I'm here. I've seen where the judge has withdrawn the warrant and went ahead with the court date too.
I agree with that too. We need a little bit of misericord here.
Yeah, and that happens, and I think that kind of depends on the excuse, how credible it is. I mean, if we have bad weather and somebody says I got stuck in the snow, they're much more likely to say okay, but encourage the person to make sure they get here on time. But a lot of times it does depend on what the excuse is and how credible it seems.
I agree.
Right.
All right, does anybody want to say the last thing over failure to appear before we sign off today on the probable cause? Jump right in. All right, it looks like we're finished for right.
What I have to say.
I know, and you said it very well. Thank you, my right hand. So, thank you, everybody, for listening to The Probable Cause. Find us on Spotify. Find us on YouTube. Find us on our own Facebook page. Find us on our website, go ahead and give us suggestions for what you want to talk about. We have an expert right here. We have someone very extremely knowledgeable, even though she isn't an attorney. You have a journalist right here who will dig into it until she finds out what the truth is. So anyway, until next time, we say goodbye from The Probable Cause. This episode is filmed and edited by Frosty Pictures. The Probable Cause is produced by Maumee Media.